25 latest questions on AZ-900 exam coming up in this video. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. In this part 6 of AZ-900 series in 2023, we bring to you 25 latest questions on AZ-900. I will also give you all the answers, will explain the cloud concepts behind each question, loads of Microsoft documentation to validate the answer and do some self-study, exam tips, and will also tell you how to get a free PDF file containing all the questions and the answers that we will discuss today. Please do not miss to watch the previous parts of this series. 80 latest and important questions are already covered, a must watch. All the links are shared in the description box. So let's jump in and prepare for AZ-900 exam. So today I will start the episode with a focus on Azure storage, redundancy and replication options. A lot of different exam questions come from this area, so you must be very clear with the concepts, else it becomes really confusing picking the right answer in the examination. So I have formulated important exam questions so that you can understand the logic and handle the question well in the exam. So here comes question number 81. It says, which Azure storage replication is the least expensive replication option? Your options are locally redundant storage or LRS. The second option is zone redundant storage or ZRS. And then we have geo redundant storage, GRS. And lastly, we are given with geo zone redundant storage, and that is GZRS. The correct answer for this question is option A, locally redundant storage. And we can validate our answer on this documentation from Microsoft, that is on Azure storage redundancy. Come down in this documentation and then we will reach to this section here. It says that locally redundant storage or LRS copies your data synchronously 3 times within a single physical location in the primary region. LRS is the least expensive replication option, and this is exactly where our answer lies. Now let's move on to the question number 82. It says, where does the copies of data maintain in LRS? Is it within a single region or across separate availability zone? The third option is secondary region, and the fourth option is primary region and the secondary region. The correct answer for this question is option A, within a single region. And we can validate the question number 82 as well in the same paragraph. It says LRS copies your data synchronously 3 times within a single physical location. Now let's move ahead, and before diving into the next question, I want to tell you, if you want to have the free PDF file of all the 25 questions with answers discussed in this video, you have to tell me the correct answers for the question number 84, 94 and 105. But please remember, if you want to avail this free PDF file, you must be a subscriber of the Tech Blackboard YouTube channel. So please subscribe to the channel and press that bell icon and send us your answers to our email ID, connectus@thetechblackboard.com. It is absolutely free for you to subscribe the channel, but it really helps us grow and keep the content free for all of you. And with that, let's move on to the question number 83. It says, which Azure storage replication comes under the redundancy in primary region? Your options are locally redundant storage, LRS, zone redundant storage, ZRS, geo redundant storage, GRS, and the last option is geo zone redundant storage or GZRS. And the correct answer for this question is option A and option B, LRS and ZRS. And the answer for the question number 83 can be validated on this Microsoft documentation. It says redundancy in primary region. And here you can see that Microsoft has given 2 options, LRS and ZRS. And that's exactly we have selected as an answer to the question number 83. So let's move on to the question number 84. It says that which Azure storage replication comes under the redundancy in secondary region? Please note, in the previous question, we were talking about primary region, and in this question, we are talking about secondary region. The options are exactly the same. However, the answer this time is option C and option D. So this time we have GRS and GZRS. And here is the validation for our question number 84. It says redundancy in secondary region. And similar to what we have selected, the same options are also given by Microsoft. We have GRS and GZRS. Please read this documentation, a very important documentation when it comes to Azure storage replication options. And now that we are here in this section, I want to bring a very important difference between GRS and GZRS. Here you can read Microsoft says that primary difference between GRS and GZRS is how data is replicated in the primary region. Within the secondary region, data is always replicated synchronously 3 times using LRS. LRS is the secondary region that protects your data against hardware failure. And with that, let's move to the next question. Question number 85 says that how many copies of data are maintained by an Azure storage account that uses locally redundant storage? Your options are 3 times, 4 times, 6 times, or 9 times. And the correct answer for this question is 3 times. So friends, when it comes to the locally redundant storage or LRS, there are always 3 copies of data that are maintained by Azure storage account. And very importantly, please remember that all these 3 copies of data are maintained in a single region. Moving on with the question number 86, it says how many copies of data are maintained by an Azure storage account that uses zone redundant storage or ZRS. And your options are 3 copies, 4, 6 or 9 copies. And this time as well, we have 3 copies of data that are maintained in zone redundant storage as well. Now you might be thinking, what exactly is the difference between locally redundant storage or LRS and zone redundant storage ZRS? Well, as I just told you that in case of LRS, the 3 copies are maintained in a single region. But on the other hand, in case of ZRS, the 3 copies are maintained across separate availability zone within a single region. And now let's move on to the next question. Question number 87, it says how many copies of data are maintained by an Azure storage account that uses geo-redundant storage, GRS, or read access geo-redundant storage, which is also known as RAGRS. And your options are 3, 4, 6 or 9. And the correct answer for this question is 6 copies of data are maintained in case of GRS or RAGRS. So once again, here comes our exam tip that 6 copies in total, including 3 in primary region and 3 in secondary region. So here you can see the division that 3 copies of data are maintained in primary region. On the other hand, the other 3 copies are maintained in secondary region. Moving on to the other similar question, question number 88 says that how many copies of data are maintained by an Azure storage account that uses geo-redundant storage, which is GZRS, or read access geo-redundant storage, which is RAGRS. And your options once again are 3, 4, 6 or 9. And the correct answer once again is 6. So where are these 6 copies maintained? Well, in case of GZRS and RAGZRS, 6 copies in total, including 3 across separate availability zones in primary region and 3 locally redundant copies in secondary region. And friends, answers to the question number 85, 86, 87 and 88 can be validated on this Microsoft documentation. It says durability and availability parameters. Here you can see that we are given with the comparison of LRS, ZRS, GRS and GZRS. This comparison is given on various parameters that you can observe here. And if you come down little and you will reach to this section which says number of copies of data maintained on separate nodes. Here you can see that for LRS, we have 3 copies within single region. We read that. And then for ZRS, we can read that we have 3 copies across separate availability zone within a single region. And then moving on for GRS, we have 6 copies total, including 3 in primary region and 3 in secondary region. Similarly, for the GZRS option, we have 6 copies in total, including 3 across separate availability zones in primary region and 3 locally redundant copies in secondary region. So let's move on to the question number 89. It says, which are Azure storage access tiers? Your options are hot tier, frequent tier, cool tier, cold tier or archive tier. And the correct answer for this question is option A, hot tier, option C, cool tier and option D, archive tier. Now let's move on to the question number 90. It says blob storage account and a general purpose storage account, both are same. So you have to tell whether it's a true statement or a false statement. And this one, my friends, is a false statement. And friends, we can validate our answer to the question number 90 on this Microsoft documentation. It says Azure Blob Storage Pricing. Here you have to come and click on this FAQs, and then you will reach to this section, the very first question or the very first FAQs. And it says a blob storage account is specialized for storing data as blobs and allows users to specify an access tier based on the frequency of access to data in that account. General purpose accounts can be used to store blobs as well as files, disks, tables and queues. So that's the primary difference between blob storage account and general purpose storage account. A very important concept to understand when it comes to AZ-900 exam and also the actual Azure working. So friends, that was a small effort from our side to make you more comfortable on the questions based on Azure storage topic. Hope you liked our efforts on researching and bringing you the latest questions. Please like the video to show your appreciation. It's a small effort for you, but it really helps our channel to grow and thereby keep all the study material free. Now let's jump on to the question number 91. It says that which page in Azure portal that you typically use to assign roles to grant access to Azure resources. Your options are Access Control or IAM, Policy Hub, User Access Management, and the last option is User Role Management. And the correct answer to this question is option A, Access Control or IAM. And this is where we can validate our answer to the question number 91. It says assign Azure roles using Azure portal. And here you can read that Azure role-based access control or Azure RBAC is an authorization system that you can use to access Azure resources to grant you assigned roles to users, groups, service principals, or manage identities at a particular scope. And then if you scroll a little bit, you will reach to this section which says step 1, identify the needed scope. More scrolling and you will reach to this section. So this is the step 2 which says open the add role assignment page. Here you can see with that access control IAM is the page that you typically use to assign roles to grant access to Azure resources. Exactly the same was our question as well, and there we chose access control. And here I want to mention that as another variations of the same question, Microsoft can also give you multiple screenshots from the Azure portal. In that case, you have to always pick this screenshot in which you are given the option of access control or IAM. Now let's move on to the question number 92. It says Azure Active Directory lets you set dynamic membership rules. So is this a true statement or a false statement? So this one, my friends, is a true statement. And this is the documentation where we can prove our answer. It says overview of dynamic membership for Teams. Here you can read that Microsoft Teams supports teams associated with Microsoft 365 groups by using dynamic membership. Further, it says dynamic membership enables the membership of a team to be defined one or more rules that check for a certain user attributes in Azure Active Directory or Azure AD. So hopefully with that documentation, you can be sure that we have chosen a correct answer. By the way, please keep in mind that Azure Active Directory is now part of Microsoft Entra. Now let's move on to the question number 93. It says that you plan to create an Azure virtual machine. You need to identify which storage service must be used to store the unmanaged data disk of virtual machine. What should you identify? Your options are containers, file shares, tables or queues. So this is the screenshot that will be given to you in the question. You can see we have 4 options and out of these, one is the correct option and that correct option is containers. So containers are the storage service that must be used in case you want to store unmanaged data disk of the virtual machine. And please also remember that Azure containers are the backbone of virtual disk platform for Azure IaaS or infrastructure as a service. And friends, please do not get confused and mix these Azure containers with the other containers which are related to Dockers and Kubernetes. They both are very different services. This Azure container that we are talking in this question is related to the storage for the unstructured data. So please do not mix with Azure containers or Dockers. Now let's move on to the question number 94. It says which cloud models can you deploy physical servers to? Your options are public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud and public cloud. So basically, can you deploy physical servers to all these 3? And the third option is hybrid cloud only. Fourth one says private cloud and hybrid cloud only. And the correct answer to this question is option D, private cloud and hybrid cloud. And why so? Because it's on private cloud and hybrid cloud where you can deploy your own physical servers, because in case of public cloud, the installation of physical servers is fully owned by the cloud provider such as Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS or Google GCP. Now let's move on to the question number 95. It says Azure pay-as-you-go pricing is an example of CapEx. True or false? And this one, my friends, is a false statement. So with pay-as-you-go pricing model, you have to pay for the services as you use them. And this is absolutely OpEx, operational expenditure, and not capital expenditure. CapEx is where you have to pay for something upfront, for example, buying a new server. Now let's move on to the question number 96. It says paying electricity for your data center is an example of OpEx. True or false? And this one, my friends, is a true statement. Although it looks a very simple statement, but it confuses a lot of AZ-900 exam takers. So let me kill that confusion once and for all. And for that, I have got this documentation from Microsoft. So basically, this is a Q&A section on Microsoft documentation. You can see that there is a comparison between CapEx and OpEx. And the question asked is that please explain the difference between CapEx and OpEx. And further, the question asked is paying electricity every month for your data center a capital or operational expense? Here you can see the answer is given by the Microsoft professional, and they say that a major difference between CapEx and OpEx can be identified with the question, is what you're buying or intend to buy an asset. An asset is something you can either sell or keep to gain continuous value from it. For example, an asset is the server in the data center or even the software and the databases on that server. Electricity is not an asset, the company cannot own it, and that's why it is seen as OpEx or operational expenditure. So let's move on to the question number 97. It says deploying your own data center is an example of CapEx. True or false? I hope by now you can very well know that this statement is true. So deploying your own data center is certainly an example of capital expenditure, and this is because data center is an asset and you are paying upfront for it, and that can be only categorized as capital expenditure. Let's move on to the question number 98. It says Azure provides flexibility between capital expenditure and operational expenditure. True or false? And most certainly this is a true statement. And now let's move on to the question number 99. It says when an Azure virtual machine is stopped, you continue to pay storage costs associated with the virtual machine. True or false? And this one is a true statement. And this is because when an Azure virtual machine is stopped, you don't have to pay for the virtual machine. However, you still pay for the storage cost associated to the virtual machine. And the most common storage costs are disks that are attached to virtual machines. Now let's take few questions on Azure resource locking. There are few important questions from this area that keep appearing in AZ-900 exam. So here comes our question number 100. It says an Azure resource can have multiple locks. Is it a true statement or a false statement? And this one is a true statement. So friends, Azure resources can have multiple logs, and you will see an example in the very next question. So here comes question number 111. It says if an Azure resource has a read-only log, you can add a delete log to the resource. Yes or no? And yes, we can add a delete log to a resource if it already has a read-only log. So that's why I said that we can have multiple logs on a same Azure resource. And now let's move on to the question number 102. It says an Azure resource inherits log from its resource group. True or false? And this one, my friends, is a true statement. And the same can be validated on this Microsoft documentation, which says log inheritance. So this one here says that when you apply a lock at a parent scope, all the resources within that scope inherit the same lock. And in our case, we are applying lock on resource group level, which is a parent level. So all the resources under this resource group will inherit logs from this resource group. Let's move on to the question number 103. It says read-only means authorized users can read a resource, but they cannot delete or update it. So it's a true or a false statement. And this one, my friends, is a true statement. And the same can be validated on this Microsoft documentation, which says lock your resources to protect your infrastructure. Here you can see that in this section, which says read-only means authorized users can read a resource, but they cannot delete or update it. And that's why we have marked this statement as true. Now let's move on to the question number 104. It says, which built-in roles can create and delete management logs? Your options are owner, contributor, user access administrator, and the last one is reader. And the correct answer to this question is option A, owner, and the option C, user access administrator. And we can validate our answer to the question number 104 in this documentation, which says who can create and delete logs. Here you can read, to create and delete management logs, you need to have access to Microsoft authorization or Microsoft authorization/log actions. And further it says only owner and user access administrator built-in roles can create and delete management logs. And that's exactly what we have chosen as an answer to this question. And now let's move on to the question number 105. It says delete and cannot delete. Both logs achieve same objective. Users can read and modify a resource, but they cannot delete it, whether it's a true or a false statement. And this one, my friends, is a true statement. And the validation for question number 105 is given in this section, which says that you can set logs that prevent either deletion or modification. In the portal, these logs are called delete and read only. And in the command line, these logs are called cannot delete and read only. So you can see that while this log is called delete in Azure portal, on the other hand, the same log in command line is called as cannot delete. And similar variation is also given for the read only. In the Azure portal, it's called read dash only. Otherwise, in the command line, it is called read only with no space or dash. So that was all for today. I'm really sure that you learned some new concepts and are feeling more confident for the AZ-900 exam. So please, before closing the video, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and share our videos to all your loved ones who are also learning Microsoft Azure. I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.
If this video has added any value in your learning, a like and subscribe is highly appreciated. Share this video in your family and friends to spread and expand their learning. Your comments and feedback give me a chance to interact with you, and I look forward for them. We will meet again in our next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.